Michael woke up to the soft, uneven whining of Peabody at the bedroom door. The old Labrador barely heard anything anymore, and his vision had faded to a cloudy haze, but somehow he always sensed when the house filled with the quiet weight of worry. It was early, barely 6 in the morning, and the air held the smell of cheap coffee and damp work boots, the ones Michael hadn't had the energy to dry after his overnight shift. He looked at his own hands, trembling fingers, cracked skin, nails worn short. Once, long ago, he had dreamed of becoming a doctor. Instead, life bent him into another shape, 52 years old and still riding in the back of an ambulance as a paramedic, patching wounds that never seemed as deep as the ones he carried inside himself. That December of 2010 had hit the largest state in the U.S. with an unforgiving cold, the kind that made headlines and broke records. People kept saying it was the hardest Christmas season in decades, and Michael believed it. He felt it in every overdue bill, every coin he dropped into the jar labeled groceries. But this morning was worse than most. He knew the mortgage payment was late again. Jennifer tried to act as if she didn't notice, but he had seen the truth. She woke before him each day, stared out the frosted window, and wrapped her hands around a coffee mug as if it were the last warm thing in her life. He eased out of bed and slipped into the hallway, careful not to wake her. Peabody pressed his graying muzzle against Michael's knee, a gesture so gentle and loyal that it nearly cracked him open. That old familiar ache spread through his chest, shame, helplessness, the fear of failing the people he loved. Their daughter, Sarah, was preparing college applications she wasn't sure they could afford. She joked about scholarships, made light of things, but Michael saw the worry in her eyes. He walked into the kitchen and sat down heavily at the small wooden table. Outside, neon signs flickered across the icy parking lot of the strip mall across the street. Holiday decorations were already strung over the storefronts, bright reds, greens, golds, mocking him with promises of cheer he couldn't buy. Peabody curled up at his feet, finally settling. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. Another day, another shift, another reminder that after 30 years in emergency medicine he had saved countless strangers but could not save his own family from sinking. And then the phone rang. Not his cell, the landline, the one no one had used in months. He stared at it, pulse rising. Something in the sound of it, sharp, unexpected, almost urgent, felt like the first ripple of a story he didn't yet understand. Michael hesitated before picking up the phone. The landline usually meant robocalls, debt reminders, or wrong numbers. But this ring carried a strange weight, as if someone on the other end already knew his name, his failures, his exhaustion. "Hello?" he said, voice rough. A pause. Then a crisp, measured voice. "Is this Michael Turner?" His spine straightened. "Yes. This is dispatch. We know you're off shift, but we're short-staffed and we've had an unusual call. Your supervisor said you were closest." Michael exhaled. Another emergency. Another problem that wasn't his but somehow always ended up in his hands. He rubbed his forehead. What kind of call? Welfare check. Possibly medical. Elderly male, lives alone. Neighbor heard shouting during the night. We can't reach him. Address is near you, walking distance, actually. He glanced toward the frosted window. Outside, the street was still dim, cold, silent. All right, Michael said. I'll go. He left a note for Jennifer on the kitchen counter, quick call. Be back soon, then grabbed his jacket and stepped into the freezing air. Peabody watched from the doorway with cloudy, patient eyes. The house in question was 2 blocks over, at the end of a cul-de-sac where most homes were dressed in bright Christmas lights. But this one was dark, quiet, and clearly neglected. Paint peeled from the siding. The porch light flickered weakly. Michael knocked. No answer. "Sir. This is emergency medical services. I'm coming in." He tried the door, it was unlocked. Inside, a single lamp glowed in a cluttered living room. Boxes were stacked everywhere, old newspapers, dusty books, unopened mail. The air was cold, as if the heat hadn't worked in days. Then he saw him, an older man, maybe 70, maybe older, collapsed beside an overturned chair. But he was conscious, propped on one elbow, glaring stubbornly at the mess around him. "You took your sweet time," the man rasped. Michael knelt beside him. "I came as fast as I could." "What's your name?" "Harold," he muttered. "Harold P. Avery." Something flickered in Michael's memory. The name felt familiar, like something he'd skimmed in a newspaper years ago. "Can you tell me what happened?" "I fell," Harold said. "Not the first time. Damn legs don't listen anymore." Michael checked for injuries. Nothing life-threatening, but Harold was weak and dehydrated. He should have been in a hospital, or at least had someone to check on him. "You live alone?" Michael asked. Harold nodded bitterly. "Everyone's dead or gone. And I don't like strangers." Michael swallowed a frustrated sigh. "Well, unless you want to stay on this floor for Christmas, someone's got to help you." Harold studied him for a long, evaluating moment, an odd, penetrating stare. "You're not like the others," Harold said quietly. "You're tired. But not rotten." Michael blinked. "I'm just doing my job." "No," Harold said. "You're doing more than that. You're still showing up." The words landed inside Michael like a spark in old, cold ashes. Michael helped him stand, supported him to a chair, checked his vitals again. As he moved around the living room, something strange kept catching his eye: heavy wooden crates stacked behind the couch, each marked with shipping symbols. Not Amazon boxes. Not moving boxes. Something older. Something that didn't belong in a suburban house in 2010. "What's with all these?" Michael asked. Harold's lips twitched. "Those? Just old things. But you," his voice sharpened, "you look like a man who thinks he's out of time." Michael froze. It was too accurate. Harold continued, softer, "Sit for a moment. I want to tell you something." Michael shouldn't have. Protocol said he needed to call for backup or transport. But something in Harold's voice, urgent, almost conspiratorial, rooted him to the spot. "All right," Michael said slowly. "I'm listening." Harold leaned back, eyes gleaming with a faint, unsettling intensity. "You have no idea who you just saved," he whispered. And though Michael didn't know why, a chill rippled down his spine. Michael felt the hair on the back of his neck rise. He tried to keep his voice steady. "What do you mean by that?" Harold didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pointed to one of the large wooden crates stacked near the wall. "Open it." "I'm not supposed to." "Open it," Harold repeated, with surprising force for a man who could barely stand a few minutes ago. Against his better judgment, Michael walked over and knelt beside the crate. It was old, far older than the house around it, reinforced with metal bands and sealed with thick nails. Someone had pried it open already, the lid resting loosely on top. Inside were folders. Dozens of them. Thick, aging envelopes, documents bound with twine, and several leather-bound notebooks. "What is all this?" Michael asked. "My life's work," Harold said. Michael glanced back. Harold was watching him closely, with a mix of pride, wariness, and something else, something like regret. "I'm no historian," Michael said. "Whatever this is, you should tell your family. Or a lawyer." "I told you," Harold cut in, "I don't have anyone left." "And lawyers?" He scoffed. "They tried to take everything from me once." Michael lifted one of the leather notebooks. It was heavy, the cover worn smooth by decades of handling. Inside, rows of equations, diagrams, sketches of machines he didn't recognize. "This looks technical," Michael murmured. "A lifetime of research," Harold said softly. "Patents. Designs. Innovations no one believed in until it was too late." Michael flipped a few pages, mathematics, physics, strange mechanical concepts he didn't fully understand. "Were you an engineer?" he asked. Harold let out a bitter laugh. "I was the engineer. The one they pushed out of my own company. The one whose ideas built an empire, just not for me." Michael stared at him. "You're saying you were cheated?" "I'm saying," Harold replied, eyes narrowing, "that I spent 40 years watching others get rich off what I created. And now, before I die, I want at least one decent man to know the truth." Michael didn't know what to say. The story was too big, too strange, too sudden for a cold December morning in the largest state of the country. "And why me?" he asked quietly. "Because you came," Harold answered simply. "When your shift was over. When no one else bothered. Because you look like a man who thinks life has passed him by. But life," he leaned closer, voice lowering, "isn't done with you yet." The room suddenly felt smaller, the cold air thicker. Michael could hear his own pulse. Harold pointed to another crate. "There's something else. Open that one." Michael approached it carefully, lifted the lid, and froze. Inside were metal cases. Sleek, fireproof, military grade. He lifted one. It was heavier than it looked, sealed with combination locks and stamped with a name. H. P. Avery, Project Morningstar. Something tightened in Michael's chest. "What is this?" he whispered. Harold's voice softened to a fragile sigh. "My greatest invention. The one they would have killed for." Michael set the case down gently. "I don't understand. Why keep all of this? Why hide it?" "Because," Harold said, "if they found it, they would have buried me long ago. And everything I worked for would have disappeared." Michael felt the weight of the moment settling on him. "You need help," he said. "You need protection. Medical care. Someone to assist you." "What I need," Harold said firmly, "is a successor." Michael blinked. "A what?" "A successor, Michael. Someone I can trust. Someone who hasn't been corrupted by money or ambition. Someone who still knows how to show up." His eyes drilled into Michael's. "Someone like you." Michael's breath caught. "You're choosing the wrong man. I can barely pay my electric bill." "That," Harold said, "is exactly why you're the right one." Before Michael could respond, Harold's voice changed, quieter, more fragile. "Bring me the black envelope from the drawer behind you," he said. Michael turned and found it, a single heavy envelope sealed in wax. "Open it." Inside was a document, a will, freshly notarized, and a short handwritten note. Michael scanned the first few lines. And his heart stopped. He looked up slowly, stunned. "Harold, this says you're naming me as..." "Yes," Harold whispered. "If anything happens to me, everything in this house becomes yours." Michael felt the floor tilt beneath him. "But, why?" he managed. "We don't even know each other." Harold closed his eyes. "You saved my life," he said. "Now it's my turn." Michael stared at the crates. The documents. The metal cases. The chilling words Project Morningstar. His entire world felt suddenly unstable, like he'd stepped into a story meant for someone else. Then Harold added quietly, "And this is only the beginning." Michael tried to steady his breathing, but the room felt tilted, the air thick with a kind of electricity he couldn't name. He had come here expecting a routine welfare check. Instead, he stood ankle-deep in a stranger's past, surrounded by crates full of secrets that smelled like history and danger. He swallowed hard. "Harold. I can't accept something like this. This is your life. Your work." Harold's voice came out thin but sharp. "My life is almost over. My work. It's been stolen, buried, rewritten by people who had more money than conscience. You think I want them to have the last laugh?" He gestured toward the metal case labeled Project Morningstar. "That is the only invention they never managed to take from me. The only one I kept hidden. And the only one that still matters." Michael felt heat rising in his chest, confusion, disbelief, a pulse of fear. "What is it?" he asked. "Some kind of weapon?" Harold let out a gravelly chuckle. "No. Not a weapon. A breakthrough. A technology decades ahead of its time." His eyes gleamed in the dim light. "Something that could change the world, or change one man's life." Michael didn't like the way he phrased that. "Harold," he said slowly, "you need to tell me exactly what's in that case." Harold's face softened, unexpectedly, painfully. "I will. But not today. Today, I need something else from you." Michael tensed. "What?" "Take Peabody home," Harold said. Michael blinked. "Peabody?" Harold nodded at the dog curled loyally by the kitchen doorway. "I've looked after him for years. He was my brother's dog. But I can't care for him anymore, not the way he deserves. And he seems to like you." Michael stared at the animal. Peabody's cloudy eyes lifted to meet his own, trusting, unafraid. "But I already have a dog," Michael said. "My Peabody." The words died on his tongue. Harold smiled faintly. "I know. And that's the strange part, isn't it? The resemblance was uncanny. The same golden fur. The same gentle slant in the eyes. Even the same name." Michael shivered. "Is this some kind of coincidence?" Harold didn't answer. He just looked at him with that same, unnerving, all-knowing expression. Then he pressed on. "Take him, Michael. For tonight. I'll call tomorrow. There's more I need to show you." Michael hesitated. Every instinct said this was spiraling beyond anything he was qualified to handle. But Harold looked small in his chair, fragile in a way Michael recognized too well, a man running out of time. "All right," Michael said softly. "For tonight." Harold exhaled in relief. "Good. Now go." before I change my mind and tell you everything at once. You're not ready yet. Michael helped Peabody, Harold's Peabody, stand, clipped on the dusty leash he found by the door, and stepped out into the freezing morning. The moment he crossed the threshold, he felt the strangest sensation, as if he had just exited one world and entered another. When he reached his own house, Jennifer was waiting in the doorway, arms crossed, worried lines etched sharply across her forehead. "Michael, where were you? You left a note but, wait. Why do you have two Peabodys?" Michael opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "It's a long story." The two dogs sniffed each other cautiously, then settled side by side like old friends reuniting. Jennifer stared. "Michael," she said slowly, "what happened?" He couldn't answer. Partly because he didn't know how. Mostly because he didn't know what was safe to say. Instead he said, "I need a shower. Then we need to talk." Jennifer didn't argue. She knew that tone, Michael's deep trouble tone. The tone he used when a life he couldn't save followed him home. But this time, it was something else entirely. Hours passed. The sun set early, painting the largest state in America with a heavy winter dusk. Michael spent the day trying to distract himself, fixing a loose cabinet hinge, folding laundry, walking both dogs, but he couldn't stop replaying Harold's words. "You're not like the others. You're still showing up. You look like a man who thinks life has passed him by. Life isn't done with you yet." By evening, Jennifer and Sarah were both watching him closely over dinner. "You're quiet," Sarah said. "Even for you." Michael managed a thin smile. "Just tired." But inside, he was buzzing with dread and anticipation. Something was happening. Something enormous. Something impossible. And at exactly 8:14 p.m., the landline rang again. Jennifer jumped at the sound. "Michael, who even has that number?" Michael stood slowly, heart pounding. He already knew who it was. He lifted the receiver. Before he could speak, a trembling voice whispered, "Michael, help me. They found me." Then the line went dead. For a moment Michael couldn't move. The dial tone hummed in his ear, cold and merciless. "They found me." Harold's words echoed like a warning from another lifetime. Jennifer stood up from the dining table, face pale. "Michael? What happened?" He couldn't answer. Not yet. His mind was already racing. Jacket. Boots. Flashlight. Phone. Keys. He grabbed everything without thinking, the way he did during emergencies, pure muscle memory forged over decades. "Stay here," he said hoarsely. "Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in." "Michael. I'll explain when I get back." The two Peabodys whimpered in unison, sensing the tension. Before Jennifer could argue, he was already out the door and running down the icy sidewalk. The neighborhood was silent except for the crunch of snow under his boots. Christmas lights blinked in rows of warm colors, impossibly cheerful against the dread coiling in his stomach. When he reached Harold's house, something was wrong. The porch light, earlier dim, was now completely dead. The curtains were drawn. And the front door stood slightly ajar, swaying gently with each gust of wind. Michael's breath quickened. He pushed the door open. "Harold?" No answer. He stepped inside and immediately saw the overturned chair. Papers scattered across the floor. A broken lamp. And the crates were open, their contents rummaged through, some missing entirely. Someone else had been here. Harold. Michael called louder. A faint sound answered. A cough. A wheeze. Then a weak, shaky rasp. In here. Michael followed the voice into the back room, a workshop filled with dusty tools, coiled wires, and workbenches. He found Harold slumped against the wall, clutching his side. Blood stained his shirt. Michael dropped to his knees. Harold, what happened? Harold forced a smile, teeth red. They finally came for it. For what? For Morningstar. Michael tried to stop the bleeding with his hands, but Harold shook his head. No time. Listen to me. His voice was barely audible. They want what's in the metal case. But they don't understand it. They think it's a prototype. A device. Something to sell. Michael swallowed hard. Then what is it? Harold's hand trembled as he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small silver key on a chain. He pressed it into Michael's hand. Morningstar isn't a machine, Harold whispered. It's a formula. A method. A blueprint for renewal. Michael frowned. Renewal? A breakthrough in energy storage, medical application, material science, call it whatever you want. It can power cities, or rebuild a man's body from the inside out. Michael froze. Rebuild a... Harold's eyes locked onto his. That's why you were the only one I could trust. You know suffering. You know limits. You know what it means to keep going even when everything hurts. Michael felt something inside him crack. What do you want me to do? Harold coughed, deep, final. Take Morningstar. Hide it. Finish it. Or destroy it. But don't let them have it. His grip tightened on Michael's wrist. And don't waste what it can give you. Michael swallowed, throat burning. Harold, I can't. You must. Harold forced the words. This is your chance, Michael. Your life doesn't end in debt and exhaustion. Not unless you choose it. Michael felt tears sting his eyes, unexpected, blinding. Please, Harold whispered. Let me leave something good behind. Michael opened his mouth to answer, but Harold's head fell forward. And the workshop went silent. Michael sat there for a long moment, the weight of the key burning into his palm. Then he heard footsteps outside. Slow. Methodical. Approaching. He jumped to his feet, grabbed the metal Morningstar case from under the workbench, left behind by whoever had fled in a hurry, and slipped out through the back door just as a silhouette passed the frosted glass of the front window. He didn't run. He sprinted. By the time he reached home, Jennifer and Sarah were waiting, terrified, but alive. He locked every door, shut every curtain, and set the Morningstar case on the table. What is that? Jennifer whispered. Michael didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, he opened the silver key in his hand. It shimmered faintly in the kitchen light. He looked at his wife, his daughter, his two aging dogs curled anxiously by the door. For the first time in years, Michael felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Not fear. Not shame. Not exhaustion. Possibility. Harold had said Morningstar was a blueprint for renewal. A second chance. A miracle you had to earn. Michael drew a slow breath. "Everything's going to change," he whispered. Sarah stepped closer. "Dad?" Michael turned the key in the lock of the metal case. It clicked. And as the lid slowly opened, light glinted off glass vials, handwritten formulas, a small device humming with dormant power. Michael felt a surge of destiny as unmistakable as heat from a flame. Harold had been right. Life wasn't done with him yet. It was only beginning. And outside their house, in the freezing December night, the Christmas lights flickered in a familiar rhythm, almost exactly like the beeping of a heart monitor restarting after a long, desperate silence. A quiet echo of the life Michael had spent decades trying to save. Now turning back toward him.